It's Friday, March 29th. Let's talk PlayStation. To kick it off, your weekly reminder for your instant game collection, PS Plus games is Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered and The Witness. You have until April 1st to download those games. Now, we do know what we're getting in April. So for April 2019, we are getting Conan Exiles and The Surge, which is alright, I guess. I mean, there's still a large dislike bar on that YouTube video. People aren't really that jazzed about it, but it's not terrible. Still pretty disappointing that we're not getting a third PlayStation Plus game, and we've still got two PS4 games, so I don't know. We're going to be stuck with two PS4 games. That's just the way it's going to be until we get another major platform, which will presumably be PlayStation 5 at some point in 2020. Now, for our next news story, real quick, PS4 Firmware 6.51 is available right now. Nothing major. Still no PSN name changes, nothing like that, so there you go. We're still waiting on that feature missing in action. Now, we'll cover this up real quick, but earlier in the week, Sony announced that they were going to be doing a direct-style live stream called State of Play. And it was announced for Monday, March 25th, so we didn't actually get to talk about the announcement. This live stream has already come and gone, so we already know what happened. Now, before we even get into the content of State of Play, I just want to say, initially, great idea. Something just like Nintendo Direct or Inside Xbox, a very short 10, 15, 20-minute show, however long it needs to be, but deliver content to the consumer that is more exciting, more accessible, not just a standard press release or a blog post. I was totally behind this idea. Of course, people got their expectations set way too high, and they were expecting something, crazy, almost E3 level, which was, absurd to even possibly expect that. But for the first State of Play, I can see how people are a bit upset. So we'll go over every single State of Play announcement real quick. So it was about a 20-minute live stream. You had this sort of stoic voiceover, no actual personality from Sony was on screen or anything like that, but we got Iron Man VR announced for 2019. Crash Team Racing trailer was shown off. That's coming June 21st. No Man's Sky gets VR support. That's coming this summer. Ready Set Heroes, this cool little top-down versus game, multiplayer, coming 2019. Blood and Truth, we got a new trailer for that PlayStation VR game. That's coming May 28th, so we got a release date for that game. There was a VR sizzle reel. We all know Sony loves their sizzle reels. And this actually included a release date for Everybody's Golf coming May 21st and Vacation Simulator coming June 18th. I actually wish these games got more of a substantial trailer because these games actually excite me to a great level. Observation was announced for PS4. That's coming May 21st as well. Then Five Nights at Freddy's VR is coming spring 2019. A little throwback there to that game. We haven't seen anything about that game in such a long time. Oh man, those are the old YouTube years, huh? More people watched that game than they actually played it. New Concrete Genie trailer. This is from Pixel Opus. This is a Sony first-party studio. Some people don't know that this is a first-party game. This game was delayed to fall 2019, indirectly announced. This game was supposed to be coming early 2019. Of course, it never came, but they updated it saying it's coming fall 2019. A new trailer for Days Gone, that's fine. We're going to see more of this game up until its release, April 26th. And then a trailer for Mortal Kombat 11. I think there were some character announcements or something in there. But that's essentially it. And so what really upset people about this first State of Play, and the YouTube dislikes on these videos is super high. People are really not pleased with this. Now it's twofold, because even if they announce small little regular PS4, PSN titles, or maybe show a little bit of third-party content, people still weren't going to be that happy because their expectations are way too high. I can understand why this one was very poorly received because it was a lot of VR content. And, it's a double-edged sword because people that own PlayStation VR, they want that content, they want that support. We don't want another PlayStation Vita where Sony doesn't really support the hardware all that much, and then it kind of just slowly dies. I mean, we can't sit here and say that Sony doesn't support PlayStation VR. They've been doing an excellent job with that. At the same time, though, not many PS4 owners have PlayStation VR. A lot of gamers are still adamant about supporting VR or getting into the medium. And so when you've got a live stream show that's supposed to promise updates on PS4 and VR content, people are thinking maybe a healthy mix between the two, but this was very VR heavy focused. So I understand that people are maybe upset with it. This wasn't the best first episode to do State of Play. Sony has said that they're going to be doing more State of Plays, which is I'm totally fine with. Do more of these. The thing is, this is probably the kind of content that you would have saw at an E3 2019 if Sony were to hold a press conference this year. They probably would have had to take this, say, 20 some odd minutes of footage and expand that into, say, 30 or 40 minutes because they just don't have anything to show us. And they're not going to continuously show us more Ghost of Tsushima, Death Stranding, Last of Us Part 2. It's nice to see those things, but people don't need to see trailers over and over and over again. We do want to see genuine announcements, which Sony doesn't have, and so that's why State of Play, I think, is now becoming a thing. And also the sort of irrelevance of E3 and certain trade shows. It seems like many publishers are kind of stepping away from that area. Not completely, certainly. They're still semi-relevant, but this is still a great idea. I wish there was more of a personality on screen. I think the stoic voice announcing everything and not seeing anybody from Sony directly, I think was kind of a little too stale, maybe a little too dry for my taste, but it's a step in the right direction. It was just a very bad first episode. But while we're on the topic of State of Play and PlayStation VR in general, we can move on to our next news story, which is about PSVR sales. So Sony gave us an updated figure this past week, and as of March 3rd of this year, PlayStation VR is at 4.2 million units sold worldwide, which is certainly pretty good, I'd say. It's hard to judge these numbers because the VR marketplace is so small, but by default, that number is essentially considered big because PlayStation VR is at the forefront of this market. When comparing it to premium VR headsets like HTC Vive or the Oculus Rift, PSVR is at the forefront. So 4.2 is pretty good. I mean, some people like to look at these numbers and compare it to, say, the PS4's install base, which is well past 90 million units right now. So people think, oh, well, that's not a very good attach rate. But PlayStation VR is a very expensive peripheral. So when you also try to, say, compare it to another peripheral, like maybe Kinect from Xbox 360, which was highly successful, sold over 25 some odd million units in just a few years. That peripheral, while it was on the more expensive side, it wasn't nearly as expensive as PlayStation VR when it launched, and even still today, where it's floating around $250 for most bundles. So certainly it's pretty impressive, and like we had just mentioned, Sony's committed to it, I mean, now granted, it's not like a bunch of first-party studios are working on it. Sony's got some first-party studios dabbling with it and releasing games on it, like we just saw Blood and Truth, that's from London Studio, but, they're still working with a lot of independent developers, smaller developers that are experimenting on the platform. Sony's very committed to it, and so at least we don't have another Vita scenario, where the platform is supported for the first 2 years and then is just kind of left in the dust and they don't really do anything with it. Sony's really committed to virtual reality. So at the very least, this bodes well for PSVR in the future. Now going back to a few weeks where we got an update on Dreams and how it was actually getting an early access release where it would actually cost about $29.99 and you would actually have access to the game, the creator features, not a single player campaign or anything like that, no VR content, but basically an early access version of the game that after a while you'd get full access to the game, but essentially they were finally doing a soft release of it. Well, they said that was going to be coming in the spring. Now we got an official release date. That's April 16th. So finally, this game, in some way, shape, or form, in some small capacity, will be available April 16th. But this is great news. Now the game can finally be exposed to people, and some interest can finally start being built out of the creation tools and what people make in the game, and more people can see what's possible in the game, and some actual hype can be put into it for people that either want to get into this early access or just buy the final product whenever that decides to release. Which, FYI, this little early release does apparently have limited spaces available. They didn't really go into details about that. They said there'll be plenty of copies available of the game when it goes live on the store, so not sure to the extent of what they're really getting at there. Maybe there will be a certain cutoff after they sell a certain amount of units, I don't know. But at the very least, we don't have to wait that much longer to finally get our hands on Dreams, and I, for one, cannot wait to finally start playing with it. Now, I did not think we'd be talking about Kaz Hirai again so soon on this channel, but if you remember last year in February, Kaz Hirai stepped down from his CEO position to just take on the role of chairman and board of directors, and Kenichiro Yoshida was stepping in to be the new acting CEO. That's been fine for as long as it's been going on up until this point, but recently Kaz announced he will be stepping down from that as well and preparing for retirement on June 18th, 2019. Current CEO Kenichiro Yoshida was quoted as saying, "Hirai-san and I have been working on management reforms together since December 2013. While he will still be retiring from both chairman and our board of directors, we look forward to his continuing high-level support to Sony's management that encompasses a breadth of diverse businesses." So that was actually part of the announcement, is that even though Hirai is retiring and not being on the board of directors anymore, he is still going to be providing consultation every so often, which, to what extent, I don't know. I'd imagine it's not that much. I'm sure Kaz is going to try and be on a beach or something. He's going to get a text from Kenichiro Yoshida. "Hey, what's going on? Can I get your input on this thing about PlayStation Network?" All right, it's probably not to that extent, but Kaz definitely deserves some retirement. He's got some of those gray hairs. I'm sure the job has caused a great level of stress over the years, trying to, recoup from that PSN hack that we just did a documentary on, or the trials and tribulations of PlayStation 3, riding high on the success of PS4. You know, he left the game a winner for sure, just like Andrew House did as well. Now, if you are a Gran Turismo fan and you just love Gran Turismo Sport and you're worried about more additional content for that game going away anytime soon, fear not. Series creator Kazunori Yamauchi was quoted as saying, "We have no intention of stopping those updates and additional content for the game. I think nowadays we are no longer in the era where you hold on to new cars and tracks that you create for the next title, and you save it all for your release. I don't think we work that way anymore. Now it is sort of like being on Spotify or the iTunes store. I think it is more natural to have new additional cars and tracks added to the store as they are ready to go." So no matter which way you slice it, that is certainly good news, and man, this guy and his studio, they just love Gran Turismo. So if you are a fan of this franchise, you have no fears whatsoever. Alright everyone, we've got a new entry into the backwards compatibility patent saga that we've been following for the past few weeks to a month now. And to bring you up to speed, we've had 2 so far. And yes, they were filed years ago, but they were recently made public. That's why we're talking about them now. Both these patents, the inventor was credited as Mark Cerny, the PS4 architect. That's why it's kind of a big deal. And these are 2 separate methods of emulation, or presumably 2 separate methods encompassed into one emulator that Sony is currently building for, we assume, PlayStation 5. One was on CPU impersonating, another one on bus operations. Now we've got a third one that was recently published on March 19th. Now this patent says, and I quote, "A new device executing an application on a new CPU determines whether the application is for a legacy device having a legacy CPU. When the application is for the legacy device, the new CPU executes the application with selected features of the new CPU that are not present on the legacy CPU disabled, or with a latency of instruction execution of the new CPUs altered to match or approximate a latency of the legacy CPU, or with algorithmic details of operation of one or more units of the new CPU altered to match or approximate algorithmic details of operation of corresponding units of the legacy CPU." Yes, that is complete technical jargon. Of course, it doesn't mean much to many of you, but when you've got 3 separate patents now with Mark Cerny behind this, you know this is Mark Cerny's love child right now. This is a passion project of his. I think this is getting very serious now. I'm seeing a lot of people say, oh, this is probably just for PS4 games. I don't think people are really understanding the concept that PS4 backwards compatibility should be a given. That should be a native thing. It shouldn't be emulated in any way, shape, or form. If you remember back with the PlayStation 3, the 60GB model, you know, every PS3 software emulates PS1 games, but the 60GB model, for example, used a system on a chip, which basically had a PlayStation 2 inside of it. That's native play, more or less, of PlayStation 2 titles. So I think what people are misunderstanding about this is that for PlayStation 5, which is going to be based on the x86 architecture, that's what PS4 is based on. It should be no problem in theory. This is what PlayStation 4 and PS4 Pro does right now. It's not to the extent of what this jargon's talking about here. This is referring to legacy applications, legacy devices. Yes, that could mean PS4, but like I'm saying, PS4 is based on x86. This should not be a problem. PS4 and PS4 Pro are the proof of concept of that. This must be referring to something older than that. Which certainly could be those PlayStation 2 games that are available on the PlayStation Store right now. That could very much so be a scenario that we're dealing with here, because we already have those games, and they are, you know, up-res, they do have trophy support, they do have all this extra stuff, and we've seen patents regarding that already, actually. But the fact that Mark Cerny is behind these patents really makes me think this is a passion project he's doing to make PlayStation 5 the ultimate piece of PlayStation hardware. Now, that's something I want to believe, and I genuinely hope that is what we will see. When we see this machine, I really hope that's something they do on stage and say this machine can play every single PlayStation game you've ever had. If it's on disc, if it's on the PlayStation Store, if you've bought it, you can play it. They've seen what Microsoft has accomplished with Xbox One. Things like that don't go unnoticed. Sony sees that, and they certainly see your concerns. They see your opinions. They understand this is something that's very passionate to people. They see the success that Microsoft's had with it. And they just were in a rock and a hard place with PS4, and I think this is something that they're gearing up on PlayStation 5. I really hope that's the case, and we'll see if more patents start to come up about this. Now, good segue, but let's do another patent real quick. This one isn't really much of a big deal. I would assume we'd probably never see this, but this is a patent regarding physical content, items, peripherals, some kind of thing that you would buy that would actually translate to digital content. I'm assuming this is referring to something in regards to like amiibos, basically. Some sort of physical item that you'd buy that can deliver digital content. So the patent doesn't really get into specifics. I mean, again, it's all that technical stuff where it doesn't even sound like a real human talking. but that's more or less what it means. I'd imagine that we may not actually ever see this. I'm sure Sony's explored it to some capacity. I hope they wouldn't do something really weird and dumb like that. I mean, the thing is, GameStop and ThinkGeek, I think, already have some initiative going on. We talked about it actually a year or 2 years ago. They're called Totakus, whatever the hell they're called. I probably butchered the hell out of that, but they're little $10 figures. At first, they were a line of PlayStation figures. Again, they're $10. They're super cheap, right? They don't have that weird NFC stuff where they give you digital content or whatever. I think that's kind of cheesy. But now that's like for everything. There's Microsoft ones, other third-party games and stuff like that. So if you're into like collecting and stuff, go ahead and do that. I don't think Sony's really going to explore this to any capacity, but there is a patent for that. All right, we've got a Death Stranding announcement. So recently, Kojima on Twitter posted about how the game is not in a debugging stage or anything like that, but more or less they're combing through certain elements of the game, certain development aspects, and they're putting it together more or less. Not really sure what they're getting at. Essentially what they're saying is that they're not in a situation where the game's close to being ready or being going to print or being shipped or anything like that of that sort. I mean, what Kojima's saying is that there's adding, there's taking, there's connecting, things like that. It's almost like they built certain sections and elements of the game all separately, and now they're, I guess, being piecemealed together to do some playtesting and things like that. That's what they're saying on Twitter, is that Kojima's playing the game every single day, and we know for a fact the first few hours of the game are playable. I've actually said that I feel like the game is probably playable from start to finish. Now that's probably a little bit too far from what I've said. I maybe trying to figure out what's deemed unnecessary to the gameplay or to the narrative or what have you. Who knows? I mean, it's so speculative. Everything about this game is speculative. So there's your Death Stranding news again, which is that maybe now I'm leaning to the point where I'm like, okay, this is probably a 2020 game. At this point, I really can't see the game coming out this year, which sucks, because when this year started, I was like, I think this is going to be the year. I think this is going to be it, because everybody's playing this game, everybody's talking about this game, everybody's talking about how cool it is, how amazing it is, and just as all that sort of hype gets built up and people are speculating, oh my god, is it going to be this year? Now Kojima's like, oh man, I need to start sending out tweets saying the game's not ready and we're still working on it. And that's what we've been getting for the past few weeks, so there you go. Moving on, Sony also confirmed this past week that as of April 1st, you can no longer buy digital game certificates or cards at retailers. So when you go to a store to buy the digital version of, say, Call of Duty or this, that, and the whatever game it is, right? You can buy a $60 little scratch-off card, enter that into the PlayStation Store and download it. You can't buy those digital cards anymore come April 1st. Sony's more or less stopping that with all retailers, not just GameStop. This started off as a rumor based off a GameStop memo, but then Sony did end up confirming, yes, as of April 1st, retailers will stop getting those digital game cards. Now, retailers will still get PSN cards, and I guess they're going to explore that a little bit further with different variations of PSN cards. I can't imagine what they are really going to do with that. Most denominations are already available, 10, 25, 50, up to 100, I believe. Maybe it'll go a little bit further than that. Maybe it'll be cards that are more loadable that maybe Sony would do. I think that'd be fine. I would love a gifting option. Like, buying a digital game card was like one of the few ways you could really gift a game to somebody, more or less. You kind of have to go around that, and it's kind of crazy that it's 2019, we still don't have a gifting option. But this is Sony basically saying, look, if you want to buy a digital game, it's got to be through the PlayStation Store now. You don't really have any other option unless, again, you want to go to a store and just buy the PSN currency that way, which makes it seem a little bit redundant, but it's cutting out that middleman a little bit and making those stores ever so slightly irrelevant. And, there's a lot of avenues that people are looking at this of like, oh, this hurts gamers because now you're shutting out people that don't use credit cards, but again, you can still buy the PSN cards. This is Sony harming retailers, this and that. I don't know. It's not a huge deal right now. I think a lot of retailers already understand that they kind of have to find their place when it comes to games, media, video, music, moving away from retail space. I mean, retailers aren't ignorant to that, so games leaving was just sort of an inevitability anyway, so not really a huge deal. But this does segue nicely into our next news story, which is about, well, GameStop. I did want to talk about this because GameStop said that they are actually doing a cultural shift, more or less, where they want to move their stores more to a situation of you'd go there to hang out and try out games rather than go there to be a traditional brick and mortar, in and out, buying a game, selling a game, this, that, and the other. They want to kind of, I don't know, when I read this story, I initially thought, okay, you want to make this into like maybe an Apple Store kind of scenario where Apple stores typically see an incredible amount of foot traffic, right? Every Apple store is packed to the brim. But people aren't often buying things there. They're just trying things out, or maybe there's more educational experiences there. workshops, things like that. And so GameStop, I believe the new CEO is trying to reposition the company that way, which, to be honest, might be one of their last-ditch efforts to really make the store credible and relevant. And when you go to a GameStop store today, half the store is merchandise, the other half's games, and I had no problem with that. I feel like that was probably their best course of action anyway, was to do a lot of merchandising and things, because that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, let's face it, we're all gamers, we all enjoy nerdy things, we all like bullshit on our shelves, so that seems like not a bad idea for GameStop. And to be honest, I've always been pretty vocal about it. I'm pretty neutral when it comes to GameStop. I don't hate them. I don't vehemently despise them like a lot of YouTubers and other people voice their concerns about. You know, I go into the store. What annoys me is the upselling, the pre-orders, this and that, being hassled by the managers or the store attendants. And I understand it's their job. They're being told to do that. I have no problem with that, but I don't like that practice. At the same time, I enjoy going into GameStop and seeing all the merchandise. I like seeing the games. I like seeing good deals, this and that. So I've been pretty neutral on the store. I don't necessarily have a problem, and I wouldn't want them to go away. I still, as a guy that loves collecting games, I would love for there always to be a brick and mortar out there somewhere, but they do have to adapt. And so the merchandising thing made a lot of sense, but maybe it's just not enough. Now, they also said that they're going to increase the value of pre-owned games for people that want to come in and trade games. You know, that's fine if people still want to be into that. That's not really going to be too much of a thing in the next 5-10 years anyway, I would assume. So that's maybe kind of a short-term solution right now to get more people coming through the store. But the cultural shift idea, I think, actually makes a lot of sense. But that would take a substantial undertaking. I mean, you would have to pretty dramatically change your stores or buy a lot more square footage. I mean, the stores aren't very big traditionally. Every single GameStop I've been into has been quite small. They're usually not that large whatsoever. I remember one time I went to one that had a Pokemon tournament for, I believe it was Pokemon Battle Revolution on the Wii. And, you know, we're all packed in there, all squeezed tight. You know, that's not really an ideal environment, I'd say. So if they want to do something where they want to make it a place where you'd hang out and maybe put up, you know, a lot of chairs and couches, set up a lot of TVs, that's what they said. They want to invest in a bunch of TVs. Cool, but, like, you're going to have to buy a lot more space or shut down a lot of, what you're already doing. You're already shutting down a lot of stores, but you're going to have to do a lot. Basically, you have a lot of your work cut out for you. And they were recently trying to find a buyer for a buyout. That didn't fly so well. So you can see GameStop scrambling a little bit. I'm cautiously optimistic for the company. I don't want them to go away. If they can find a place in 2019, if they can find a place 5-10 years from now, 2020, 2030, I mean, that's all well and good. I don't want to see places where gamers like to go and hang out and buy and sell content. I don't really necessarily want that to go away. I just don't like a lot of GameStop's business practices because they're clearly pretty shitty at times. And so, you know, if they can get all that stuff out and make it into a better place where you actually enjoy spending your time there, I'm all for it. But anyway, it's time to get into Let's Talk Plus, our weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway, where one of you can win a $10 PSN code. I would like to congratulate Vita Scarni. You have won our $10 PSN code. I'll be contacting you very soon on Twitter. If you would like to win a $10 PSN code next week, it is very simple. Follow the link down below to the Gleam website. You can follow on Twitter, you can check out my Instagram page, you can follow on Twitch. Supporting the channel gets you an entry to win a $10 PSN code. Tune in next week to see if you won. Other than that, those are all the news stories that I want to fill you in on from this past week. Now, if you didn't see, on Tuesday, our video was more unboxing. You guys really liked that PS3 unboxing I did like a month or a month and a half ago. So what I did was I bought 200 more games. They're random, totally random. Like, doesn't matter what platform it is. Could be PS2, PS1, Xbox. We got a bunch of stuff in that video. Go check it out. A lot of you really enjoyed the unboxing videos, which is cool. It's just they cost money, so I can't do them all the time. But we'll maybe get another unboxing video in maybe next month. Maybe we'll do it once a month, something like that. But this upcoming Tuesday's video will probably be some PlayStation 2 facts. So if you love the PlayStation 2 like I do, there's a lot of interesting things out there that people don't know. I know there's a lot of PS2 facts videos on YouTube, but what you guys know me. What I try to do on this channel is outclass all those other videos. We're doing 50 plus facts, not just 8 here, 10 here. We don't go into detail, this and that. No, you're going to get the lowdown of the PlayStation 2, and that's coming this Tuesday. So check out that video. And more importantly, support your boy and share that video if you could. I'd greatly appreciate that. Other than that, though, that's pretty much it. That concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Badecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me, and I will see you all next Friday.